Well, let's get ourselves going. My name is Anna Perry. I'm the Executive Director of Seton Montessori Institute. It's nice to see you all here. Um, I saw many of you earlier today, but if you weren't on the first Zoom call this morning on the prepared environment for Zoom, know that that video will get posted later today on Seton Montessori Institute's social media feed. So make sure you follow us there. And I'm happy to see you here. What I shared this morning is that I've realized over the course of the week that because we run a teacher education program in addition to our lab schools, entering this learning from home situation as a part of the response to COVID-19 in our area, we at Seton had an advantage in that we already have been using this technology for a few years. We've been using it only with adults for adult education purposes, but it is known, and we have information that we can easily share with the Montessori community, as many other people are trying to quickly learn how to do this, and to do it well takes a little bit of practice. So I'm trying to share out the tips that I've been repeating over and over to Montessorians from our own communities this week, as many have taken advantage of the free account that zoom.us is offering for educators. And so in signing up for your account, that's step one. But then what do you do with it? How can you use it? And how can you manage meetings? So today, the 11 o'clock meeting right now, we're going to be talking about some best practices for setting up your profile and then setting up your meetings, and then how to manage a meeting once you're already in it. This morning earlier, we talked about the prepared environment, ourselves, our computers, and our physical space around us, and some of the techniques to make that go a little bit more smoothly. And then later this afternoon at 1:30, we're going to be meeting again using the same link to talk about how to use this technology to connect with children and with families within video conferencing during this stay-at-home learning time. Um, I find as Montessorians, we're having to make sense of virtual learning opportunities in ways that we never expected to very quickly. And I don't think we can be as critical of putting a child in front of a screen when the screen is the most available way of connecting with peers, connecting with their teachers, and staying connected to their school community. Having now 1 week of morning meetings under our belts for and of connecting with families through this virtual setting, I can tell you, just watching children logging in and seeing their friends, seeing their teachers is inspiring. They connect beautifully once they get used to the idea of looking at all the faces and being with each other in this different setting. So I would encourage you, as we do these meetings, if you feel comfortable to turn on your video, turn on your video. See how it feels, try it out. If you're on a handheld device, I would suggest holding it at least up at eye level or propping it up somewhere. It is easier to do Zoom on a computer. I use my laptop for it and prop it up. And it is easier to hear and mitigate the sounds if you use headphones. So those are just some quick tips. Other details, I am going to keep people on mute. We do have a chat box. And so as you're learning how to Zoom, I'm going to encourage that you test out the chat box. I'm going to ask you a question. Please, shh, I won't tell you, you have to read it. Okay, so you can check the chat box and chat your answers there. And then as we keep going, I'm going to ask that you hold any questions for any questions you want to ask out loud for once we've walked through the basics of the presentation. If you have questions of things as we go along, please post them in the chat box, and I will do my best to monitor it um, as we keep going. So we're talking about how to successfully host Zoom meetings for this session. And I might reference things that we spoke about earlier today in the prepared environment, and talk about things I'll reference things that we'll be talking in more depth later this afternoon as well. Okay. Um, Good. I would encourage you to pay attention as you are chatting. I see some people are posting to me privately. If it's something that is a question, I would encourage you to ask it broadly, because it's probably a question that more than one person has, and that lets us all see. And you can even answer each other in the chat box if that's something that you're comfortable with, if you've tried something. I saw someone asked, how long do we recommend for Zoom meetings with adults? Generally, if it's a teaching webinar kind of meeting, 2 hours is by far the max for one sitting in front of a Zoom screen. But for parent meetings, for staff meetings, those kinds of things, we try to keep it to an hour for adults at a time, with then breaks in between. For teacher education, it's a little bit different format, where we can go a little bit longer as needed. For children, we're really in the brave new world of just experimenting. We've started with 15-minute morning line times, and now this next week we're going to be adding some options for Spanish sessions in the afternoons and music sessions in the afternoons as well, alternating days. Again, we're starting with 15 minutes, but when we schedule a Zoom meeting for it, we're scheduling it for half an hour. I can't imagine that we would ever do more than about 20 minutes for children in the 3 to 6 program in one sitting in a group setting. If we get to one-on-one sessions, maybe for an older child, you could do a little bit longer if you're directly engaging with one child. But again, we'll talk about that in the afternoons. It's nice to see familiar faces and some new friends as well. So let's get into things. So first things first, in order to take advantage of zoom.us, if you already have a basic membership, which is their free membership, I would encourage you to go to their website and to sign up for what they're offering to schools during this crisis, which is a free account. Oop, I sent that privately. Look at me doing what I said not to do. They offered to allow schools, if you sign up with a school email address, you can have a free Zoom account that won't limit the amount of time that you're on. And it offers kind of their next level up for how many people you can have on a call at any given time. At Seton, we have used Zoom now for several years. We have a paid account because of the teacher education program. And so you'll see some of the details when I show you my profile, and management might be slightly different than what you would see, but I am going to share my screen with you at some point, and you'll be able to glean from that, so that as you're trying to set up your profile in your meetings, you have what you need for it. So first things first, once this call is done, I would suggest going online and connecting with zoom.us to the place where you can sign up for a free account. It's a really generous thing. This is a very robust tool. Many businesses are using it. You can also do these video chats using Skype, using Google Hangouts, using all kinds of other free options. Zoom is made for professionals, and so it allows, I think, a little bit more control of your overall setting. And the resolution, the quality of the video is actually quite high. For those who are newer to Zoom, in the top right-hand corner of your window, there's a little button that either says speaker view or gallery view. I'd encourage you to try both views. When I'm hosting a group meeting, whether it's adults or children, more often than not, I'm using the gallery view, which I call the Brady Bunch view, because it's lots of little boxes all on the same screen and I can see everyone's face. You'll notice that whoever is making sounds at that time, whoever is speaking, right now it's me, is kind of a highlighted box. And so if you switch it to speaker view, that's the person who comes up big, and then the rest are all smaller windows at the top. So the gallery view versus speaker view, that's an important thing to show anyone who you're going to be hosting in a meeting. I also typically show people the mute and unmute button. Even if I want them to stay muted, I find it's a comfort for adults to know how to unmute yourself if you would like to or if you feel you need to. Um, and then I will start with what I consider grace and courtesy. Like we would if you were visiting us at Seton Montessori Institute, if you came for a workshop on site, I would start the day by saying, welcome to our home away from home, a little bit about Seton, and then I'd tell you where the bathrooms are and where you can get some coffee and, you know, the basic logistics of the physical space. Here we have to orient people to a virtual space, and so that's the work that we need to do, the grace and courtesy. So showing them where the mute and unmute button is, helping them know what the speaker view and the gallery view are all about. Kelly was asking, if you already have an account, do you still need to go through the link? If you would like to have, if you have a free account and you would like to upgrade it, you will still need to go through the link. The free account lets you have meetings up to 40 minutes long, and it limits your total number of people that you can have on at any one time, much smaller than the basic membership that they're offering to schools. I'm not a Zoom expert by any means. I don't work for Zoom. I can't tell you the specifics. Their website though is really robust and relatively easy to navigate. I also find whenever I have a question about Zoom, I'll usually start by just Googling it, and I'll write the whole question out because it'll either point me towards a Zoom page or it'll point me towards a page where someone has answered it really nicely. So tips as we go along. All right. Those are the basics. So first things first, you need to create an account. Once you create an account, or once you create your school-based account, I would really encourage you to refine your profile, because this is what will be front-facing. Right now, when I look at all the boxes, I see some people have their full name, some people have their names backwards, some people have initials going in, some have their school's name. It is helpful if you're going to be meeting with adults or children that you identify yourself. You can rename what it looks like in that little box just by going to your preferences, and you can do that for different meetings. You can, if you're meeting with children, you can call yourself Miss Anna, which is how we call adults for young children at Seton, or whatever is your name, however your school does it. But then for parents or staff meetings, I typically do first name, last name. You will know what is most appropriate in your professional setting. But I wouldn't, if you're sharing the computer with others in your household, as many of us are these days, you might need to pay extra attention to that so that you don't have your spouse's name up or your child's name that they put up when they had their class online, those kinds of things. Make sense? So pay attention to those little details. And again, you can go to the prepared environment video to see more about what we said this morning. I'm going to share my screen, which is a function on Zoom accounts. It is one of the settings that when you create kind of a master account for your school or for your classroom, that you can allow participants to have or not have. For adult education, we have left it that others can share screens. Within a school context, if you're going to use this for staff meetings for the foreseeable future, it still might be a good thing to leave as an option, that others can share screens as well as the host or moderator. Does that make sense? All right, I'm going to share my screen so you can see my desktop. And when I click the button share screen, it gives me an option of either sharing a particular application or sharing the entire screen. One other point on this is I find that Zoom generally works much better, much better as a host of meetings when I'm on a computer. I use my laptop, my Mac laptop for it, and it works much better when I'm using the app and not the web-based browser version. I would strongly recommend downloading their free app so that you can learn how to navigate it from that setup. Um, Here is the view of the website where you can sign up for your school to have a membership. Here's another page on their website where they explain what they offer to schools. Again, you want to move slowly if you're showing people something online because it's not like you're navigating just for yourself. You're trying I think of it, I'm an early childhood teacher as my kind of gut place where I go thinking Montessori presentations, and I think about how I would present something within the classroom. Um, we're not going to talk about speed tests, but we are going to talk about profiles. So when you create your membership within Zoom, I would suggest that you upload a professional looking photo of yourself, especially if you're going to be front facing, um, to families so that they can see you. And and for your children as well, if you turn your video camera off at any point, then your photo can show up, which I can show you right now. There's my photo because I have it uploaded in my profile. Um, Makes sense? Good. And so then we have all the details of our meetings. I do suggest that if you use a Google-based email account, Zoom works really well with Google Calendars and emailing things out through your Google account when you directly connect it. I've done it and I've used it that way for years. It lets you send calendar invites to staff members. I don't send calendar invites to parents generally, but it's a nice way of connecting. So this is the basic profile. You'll see our profile, we do have a paid account, so we have a little bit more. But I've allowed Zoom to get into calendar events and to sync with contacts. Okay, something that I suggest. Then we go to meetings. If I want to schedule a new meeting, I have many different options. Now, typically I do this within the app, I will tell you, but Zoom, this is kind of a meta session. I'm zooming to talk about Zoom, and Zoom does not show you in screen share the many of the Zoom settings. So they will show it on the website though. So this is how I'm going to, so if I wanted to schedule a new meeting, I would say Anna's meeting with so and so, or if it's a parent meeting, um, Seton Montessori parent meeting, or name it something, because this is something that potentially other people will see. So name it what it is in a way that other people can see it. If it's a parent meeting, I would definitely add a description to it. Schedule your day and time. Know that you can, when what this duration is for is if you're using it as if you're then going to be inviting people using what they send you through your calendar, this puts the meeting parameters on it. The link actually stays active for quite a long time, and it won't cut you off if you have a basic membership. It won't cut you off after an hour, even if you go past. If you said it was only for 1 hour. Make sure the time zone is correct because that can create some confusion. Recurring meetings is a worthy button to note, because if I'm going to host this, not a parent meeting, but if I'm going to host yellow room morning meeting with Ms. Melissa, and I want it to happen, the first time we're going to do it, let's say, is going to be Monday morning at 9 a.m. Then I can schedule that for 0. I can schedule it for 15 minutes, or I can schedule it for 30 minutes. We've been doing 15-minute schedules, but knowing that we can, when we actually put it onto our own schedule, we leave about 25 minutes in case a parent wants to stick around afterwards, or if there's a child that we're particularly having a conversation with. But the what goes out to the public is scheduled for 15 minutes. So we're defining the parameters to the public more than anything. And when it's a morning meeting that I'm planning to host every morning or repeatedly over the course of the next week, we do it as a recurring meeting. So you can use the exact same link all those days. And this allows you to continue as as much as you want. So recurrence daily, repeat once a day, end date March 27th. I can make this up to 365 days from now. So I could repeat this as many times as I would like. Make sense? Um, I'm adding an AirPod into my other ear because the batteries are expiring on one. And so I keep alternating ears. I'm giving you all the behind the scenes stuff so that you get this as part of this. Registration, I don't typically require registration because I'm sending it to the people who will need the link. I do not require a meeting password. On most meetings, I always have host participant on. On most meetings, I have the participant videos on, so that anyone who signs into that meeting is now able to be visualized if possible. For children's meetings and for parents meetings, it has actually been quite nice, but when you have to give people an awareness that that's what you're doing. Um, ooh, I clicked the wrong button. There we go. Um, does that make sense? So if I'm like, for example, this next week on Monday night, we're hosting a parent meeting for one of our lab schools, and it's at 8 o'clock at night because we're trying to host it after their bedtime. That would be that's a time that when we send the email out, we send to say to parents, this will be a video conference call, and we hope you'll be able to have your video on so that we can all see each other and be together. Typically, I leave audio, both telephone and computer audio on, unless it's strictly a visual presentation. And I also enable to join before hosts. Any large group meeting, like the meeting that we're hosting today, I check the box of mute participants on entry, and that's for a few different reasons. This is one of those details that makes a huge difference in how it feels to come into a meeting. If people aren't muted upon entry and they aren't used to Zooming, they might come on while there's the children are having a fight in the background, or the TV's on really loud, or there's other really loud noises going on, and that can be jarring to everyone who's already on the call. So it's much better if you have people muted in a large group setting than asking them to mute themselves once they're on. Usually I leave people muted upon entry, and then I tell them how to unmute themselves if they want to try it out. Or for some meetings of adults who know each other, for staff meetings, for example, we just say unmute yourself when you want to say something so that you can weigh in. I do not enable a waiting room, because a waiting room means that someone has to be checking the waiting room and someone has to be then digitally accepting people in. This would be useful if you were trying to restrict access to something that people had paid to attend, and you had a separate moderator who was just doing the waiting room management, because it's a lot of work in the middle of trying to lead a meeting. So this is one that Montessori people tend to check off thinking, oh, that's a really good thing. It's not a good thing for our purposes, because you're going to be sending the link to the people who you want to be present at this meeting. That's your control for this. Again, I do not check, only authenticated users can join. You can use breakout rooms. I don't know if the free school accounts are going to include breakout rooms. I hope they do, because they're really useful, especially if you have staff workshops you want to do in this format for adults, or if you have an elementary or adolescent program in your school, breakout rooms are really useful. And I don't schedule things to record automatically, but for particular meetings, I do. So for example, for this meeting that we're hosting, I did record the meeting automatically. on the and I always choose on the local computer. You pay for your cloud-based memory and the video quality is much less. So try to look at your computer to see, do you have enough memory to save a few extra gigabytes for each of these meetings? And we can talk about how then to deal with those videos. I can designate alternative hosts, but they have to be people who are already included within the account. I don't know that that will be an option within the basic membership. Our membership allows for up to 20 users. Um, okay, that's it for the meeting setup. Are there questions? Ah, good. There are questions. If you still haven't, we answered that one. Hi, how do you add a backup host? So my understanding of how the alternative hosts work is it has to be someone who is listed under your users. And I believe the free accounts that they're offering to schools, these accounts, I don't know how many users they are allowing you to have. If someone knows the answer to that question, if you can post it into the chat, that would be really helpful. If you are allowed to have more than one user, then that person can be listed here. If I have Jennifer at seatonmontessori.org as another host, I can save this meeting and Jennifer will get an email saying Anna has added you as a co-host to a meeting. Whenever we are hosting professional meetings for Seton, I didn't do it for these weekend ones because I just threw this together this week when we saw the needs. But whenever we host, I do have a second staff member always on every single call. So all of our morning meetings for the children right now, all of our staff meetings, we typically will designate a second co-host. And that just means that if somebody has to duck out, then another person can come in. Like if my dog started having a fit and I had to go and help the dog, or those kinds of things, I would have someone else who could help. It also helps for someone else who can then manage participants, because right now you on your end, you can see a button that says participants, and if you click on it, even while we're in this full screen share mode, you'll get a little box that shows you all the participants. On mine, I can control somebody's audio and visual details, and we're going to talk more about that in a minute. So we always have a second person. If the free account doesn't allow you to name them here, which I don't think it does, and someone else said that there's only one host on the free version, once you're in the meeting, you can designate someone else to be be a co-host with you. So right now I could click on any of your names and I could designate you as a co-host, and then you would have access to muting and unmuting each other, other people, turning on and turning off people's video, and helping to moderate things in the background. Does that make sense? Questions on that? Maria asks, can you disable individual chats if you're doing this with your parents? You cannot, to my knowledge. And I don't know that you want to do that. That feels a little bit too controlled, especially since many parents have experience with Zoom and they know that the chat function exists. There's no option here to disable chats. There might be in your overall settings for your account. But generally I find the chats are just fine. And if you disable it here, people will just end up texting each other instead of doing it in a way that you can see, that you have contained them within this tool. I believe you can only have one host. I'm sorry, I do not see how to enable seeing all videos. I don't understand that question. Can you restate it for me? Someone asked privately how to enable seeing all videos. Oh, meaning, so right now, while I'm sharing the screen, you aren't able to see everybody's Brady Bunch view. Is that what you mean? The gallery view? Gallery view works here. I'll stop sharing and it'll come back up. There. That's how gallery view works. When someone is screen sharing, you won't be able to see everyone's faces. The most you can see is that little strip of faces. But on the strip, there's a little arrow at the top and a little arrow at the bottom where you can go up and you can go down to see other people who are participating. I find it's overwhelming when a group gets more than about 15 people. So I usually actually just put the speaker view up when I'm doing a group like this. So while I was talking just then, I couldn't see any of you. I could only see my window. And I also move my window so that it's directly under my camera. So if I'm checking, you end up going towards what's moving on the screen, your eyes do, and my eyes tend to go to whatever video is being shown or whoever is moving. So when I have the strip, sometimes my eyes go down to the bottom, and you see what that looks like on your end. It's not fun to look at someone who's clearly, looking in a different direction. So humanly, we look for eye contact. We still try and do it when we're in this context. So I don't know if you noticed when I was doing screen share, I'm looking in the general direction of my camera because I had moved just my little speaker face up underneath the camera so that if I wasn't looking at what I needed to look at on the website, I would end up with my eyes up close to the camera. Make sense? Lisa asked, are you the host for all your classroom meetings, or is each one of your lead teachers the host of their own classroom meeting with their children? So the language is confusing. And Seton is a big school, and we also run Montessori Children's House up in Barrington, which is a much smaller setting. We've got an account for each of those schools, and then each program level has its own account. So the coordinator of a program is the one who is the Zoom host, the one who creates the meeting and invites people to it and sends out the link. So Beth Norman, many of you know, is our infant toddler program coordinator. She has her account for the infant toddler program at Seton, and she creates the Zoom links for the meetings that we're hosting there, and she shares those with the parents as well as the teachers so that it's all centralized within one control. So I don't know if Zoom will allow you to have more than one account for a school. If you have multiple email addresses for a school, perhaps you can. But it is quite useful to be able to have, if you're in a larger setting, to have, because each account can only host one meeting at a time. So I couldn't have my teachers hosting other meetings while we're on this call right now. It would kick somebody off, and you don't want to play, Zoom roulette to see who's going to lose their chance at hosting their meeting. And so that's kind of an amateur move, which we're building the cart as it rolls down the hill, as I said earlier. There's a lot of forgiveness that happens as you're getting used to this process, but as much as you can practice it out and try different scenarios, I will show you. We're going to talk about this at this afternoon's meeting, but I wanted to show you just briefly. I can share with you the chart that we have made for our Barrington school. Let's see if it should still be up. This is our Zoom meeting schedule for this coming week. 8:45 to 9 is Marta's morning meeting for the pre-primary children, for early childhood up there, 3 to 6 year olds. So the teachers, Zoom hosting is one thing, and then who's actually leading the conversation is another. So for each of these meetings, we have the teacher. We ask the assistant to be present as well, and the assistant stays muted but sings along with anything the teacher is singing. And then we have an administrator who is either the office manager or the program coordinator, or myself serving as the administrator, who's muting anyone who needs muting. Children, if they hit the unmute button, we'll mute them again. And we say that up front to families. We're going to leave everyone on mute. As we continue on this experiment, we've already had some of the older children raising their hand and wanting to share something, or they drew a picture that they want to tell the story of. So we're starting to build in some time for those kinds of sharing opportunities as we go through this week. But generally, we leave the children muted with cameras on. If a child were to have a full meltdown, I would have no problem with shutting off their screen. I can turn off the moderator can turn off the video feed. And so that's a power we should use, kind of like we would if we were in the classroom together, we would be leaning over and putting our hand on the knee of the child having the meltdown. We can't do that here, but we can give them the grace of not having to be in public as they and their parents wrangle some behavior. So we have a schedule for morning meetings. There's an additional column on the one that we are sharing with families that includes the Zoom links. And then morning meeting for each of the 3 classrooms up there. We're doing parent meetings. We were doing open office hours, but we found very few parents were taking advantage of those. So this next week, we're going to be offering parent-teacher conferences via Zoom. And then we're hosting a parent community meeting on Monday night and an idea sharing meeting on Thursday. And then in the afternoons, we're hosting Spanish and music alternating Monday through Thursday. But those are some ideas of how we're doing this for children that we'll again be talking about today at 1:30. That's the end of the general walkthrough of how to manage meetings. I am more than happy to stick around and answer questions. Um, if you want to unmute yourself, you can either do it with the button in the bottom left-hand corner, or you can hold down the space bar, and we can go through your questions that way. I'm actually going to stop recording though now.